I think he is a war criminal.
Показали вам, что мы не сдадимся, потому что это наш дом.
People seriously hurt and seriously killed.
India-Russia relationship has worked to advantage. So if it works to my advantage, I would like to keep that going.
Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
As the sun came up this morning, a missile striking an industrial park in western Ukraine.
Geopolitical tensions, gas prices in Europe have surged to a record high.
$40,000 deaths, more than 50,000 injured, over 8 million people displaced. Exactly a year ago, Russia invaded Ukraine. The effects were, and still are, catastrophic. In this video, Moneycontrol takes you through 365 days of the Russia-Ukraine war. But first, don't forget to like and share this video, and do subscribe to Moneycontrol's YouTube channel.
Stop the military oppression. Bring the troops back to Russia.
Minutes after Moscow's announcement of special military operation, Russian missiles were fired. In response, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky enacted martial law and general mobilization. For long, Russia has believed that Ukraine is theirs. Back in 2014, Russia annexed Crimea and seized Luhansk and Donetsk. Putin was preparing for this war and awaiting to strike Ukraine. In 2021, Russia began a military buildup and amassed up to 190,000 soldiers across Ukrainian borders. Russia's invasion has a lot to do with Ukraine's interest in joining NATO. Russia would certainly dread if the West's influence neared another one of its close borders. This war isn't just two countries colliding into a border dispute. Its ripple effects were felt throughout the world.
Russia has repeatedly said it will not comply with price caps, and Novak noted the aim of the cut is to improve the market situation.
Markets continue to be roiled by the Russian invasion of Ukraine, with what was to be a quick war now extending to well over a week.
By March, many Ukrainians either fled the country, were killed, or displaced. Zelensky said around 100,000 were stuck in Mariupol under inhumane conditions. Russia captured Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The nuclear power plant is the largest in Europe. Global oil prices were impacted within just a few days into the war. One of the world's largest oil companies, British Petroleum, said it was pulling out of Russia. Even Shell pulled its investments from Russia. Amid this, many youngsters fled Russia to countries like Armenia, Turkey, and Georgia. More than 50,000 IT specialists left Russia. In March, IMF predicted war impact would flow through three major channels: higher prices on commodities, inflation rising higher, and eroding values of income.
Retail inflation and food prices inflation has shot up at 7.7%, with retail inflation rising to 6.95% in March.
Russia launched a full-scale war against Ukraine on February 24th. Now it's April.
A street in Bucha, Ukraine, strewn with bodies. At least 20 lying on the sidewalks and in the streets.
These new satellite images obtained by CNN reveal the changes at key military installations over just the past year and show that despite the damage done to Russia's military from their invasion of Ukraine, they're still expanding up.
Signing a bill that provides another important tool in our efforts to support the government of Ukraine and the Ukrainian people.
On 20th May, Russia captured Ukraine's Mariupol. Russia said until Ukrainian troops surrender, the fight over Mariupol will continue. As May concluded, Russia had captured most of the Lyman town of Ukraine. This town was strategically important as it was a railway junction and gave access to important rails, roads, and bridges. But Russia wasn't doing so well itself. Moscow asked the West to lift sanctions. By now, many foreign companies had quit producing in Russia. However, Putin thanked God that these companies had left. He said, "This is an opportunity for homegrown businesses to take their place." As the food crisis was looming in Ukraine, Moscow placed the blame on West's sanction over the crisis. The EU's economy was crumbling amid the war. The prices for energy and commodities remained volatile. By now, the profit expectations from the EU banks were lowered, despite a good recovery post-pandemic in 2021.
The United Nations International Organization for Migration estimates that as of now, over 7 million people have been internally displaced.
The Ukrainian military deliberately targeted civilian districts and infrastructure, hospitals, markets, residential areas. It was nothing else but a cold-blooded revenge against those most vulnerable, the ordinary people of Donbass.
The global economic impact only worsened with time. The OECD said the world economy will pay a hefty price for the war in Ukraine. The organization slashed its outlook for global growth this year to 3% from the projected 4.5%. The report further highlighted Europe poses the most risk in case the war escalates. Low-income economies are at risk of surging prices for basic food and energy. In response to West's sanctions, Russia began cutting gas supplies to Europe. In June, it cut deliveries through the pipeline by 75%, from 170 cubic meters of gas a day to roughly 40 cubic meters. In July, Russia shut down Nord Stream for 10 days, stating it was for maintenance. When reopened, the flow was halved to 20 cubic meters a day.
Росія не збирається відновлювати постачання газу європейським країнам, як вона зобов'язана за контрактом. Все це робиться Росією спеціально, щоб європейцям було максимально складно підготуватись до зими. І це відверта газова війна.
What Ukrainian President Zelensky predicted back in July turned out to be true. In late August, Russia completely shut down the gas supply in the Nord Stream and blamed it on equipment. The pipeline hasn't opened since. By disrupting the gas supply, Russia took Europe down. And Germany in particular was reliant on Russia for its major energy needs. Wholesale prices of gas in Europe doubled. Over the past year, Russia has cut its gas supplies to the EU by 88%, thus rushing the EU to opt for green energy transition quicker than needed.
Кожен новий день – це нова причина не здаватись. Бо пройшовши стільки всього, ми не маємо права не дійти до кінця.
Well, Ukraine's counter-offensive has reshaped the battlefield in a matter of days.
Ukraine says they've recaptured 6,000 square kilometers of territory from Russian forces in under 2 weeks.
Vladimir Putin set to illegally annex 4 occupied territories in Ukraine.
The first leak was reported on the never-opened Nord Stream 2 line on Monday, east of the island of Bornholm. Then on Tuesday, 2 leaks were found on the nearby Nord Stream 1.
On 29 September, Sweden reported a successive 4th gas leak in the Nord Stream pipeline.
Do you still think this is a righteous war?
Yes, absolutely. We're fighting pure evil. Anybody in the West that asks Ukraine to just do peace talks, they need to go through these villages. They need to see what's been done to these people.
The war continued to escalate as it stepped into its 8th month of crisis. Amid the Russia-Ukraine's offense and counter-offense, EU's energy crisis worsened. The winter was difficult for Europe as it decided to stop importing Russian-supplied gas. Analysts predicted that real gas prices will hit Europe in February-March 2023, when high winter has drained them to over 30%.
It is our fundamental obligation to ensure that the Indian consumer has the best possible access on the most advantageous terms to international markets. And in that respect, quite honestly, we have seen that the India-Russia relationship has worked to advantage.
As Russia withdrew from Black Sea grain exports, the wheat prices were up over 6%. Meanwhile, the IEA said that Europe must take immediate action to avoid risk of natural gas shortage. It added that Europe could face shortage of as much as 300 billion cubic meters of natural gas. Russia's war against Ukraine has provoked massive energy crisis that it hasn't seen since the 1970s.
That made him Time magazine's pick for Person of the Year.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, who today was officially declared Time magazine's Person of the Year.
Leads us to this year's Time Person of the Year. It is Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Amid all the celebrations, things looked rather gloomy for the energy industry, for it'll always remember 2022 as the year of Russia's invasion on Ukraine, accelerating a global energy crisis. Natural gas prices hit multi-year highs and oil nearly $140 a barrel. The invasion, followed by West's sanctions, pressurized the already strained energy economy. Even the major world economies were crumbling under scorching prices. Governments pushed towards not just solar and wind, but also coal, resulting in putting climate targets on the back burner. The war made EU question its relations with Russia and to have reserve supply chains. Russia not only opened the world's eyes to the rising economic crisis, but it also accelerated the switch towards green energy.
We are reminded in no uncertain terms that the freedom to dream is not simply a human luxury, but rather a human need that must be fought and sacrificed for.
Она обеспечена. У меня в этом нет никаких сомнений. В том числе гарантия этому то, над чем вы работаете.
The energy crisis set the US on track to become world's largest exporter of LNG. But the head of the oil company Eni, Claudio De Calzi, said EU should look after Africa and not the US for its energy requirements. Meanwhile, India approved an incentive plan of worth $2.1 billion to promote green hydrogen. The move came at a time when the country aims to achieve zero carbon emissions by 2070.
Our objective remains to ensure a Ukrainian victory in this conflict, and that's why we have accelerated and increased our support militarily for Ukraine.
Russia's aim was to wipe Ukraine off the map. Putin's war of conquest is failing.
Мы все хорошо помним картинки, когда с воздуха наносили удары по Донецку. Я хочу это повторить. Это они развязали войну.
Ти зможеш колись пробачити росіянам?
No.